I call this meeting of the Teaching and Learning Committee to order. The time is now 6:32 p.m. In attendance is Joseph Sikovic, Chair, Committee Member Joseph Lombard, Committee Member Sybil Allen, Superintendent Michael Testani, Rita Vajay, Mr. John McLeod. We've covered everybody. Everybody welcome. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of February 25th, 2020 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Ms. Allen, yes, that's fine. I'm sorry, I got confused. Anyway, the second.
Second.
Okay. Does anybody have any corrections or anything to raise up?
Mr. John Ball, for the record, I'm here in the meeting. You didn't say my name.
Oh, I apologize, Mr. Benahan. Mr. Benahan is also in attendance. I apologize for the oversight. I do remember I even spoke to you, but I went down the list. I didn't. See you all. I gotta hit see you all to see everybody else. There you are on the bottom. Sorry about that, Mr. Benahan.
It's been seconded, Joe.
Okay, yes. Any discussion? Any corrections? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
No. Abstentions. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Now, the next item up on the agenda is discussion and possible action on a distinct learning plan for all cohorts, special education, English language learner, general education, including a general discussion and including the below topics: grading, device availability, non-instructional services, graduation, and graded advancements. I know it's a mouthful and the whole paragraph, but that leaves the ability to have a general discussion on all these topics.
Okay, this is the distant learning.
Yeah, distance learning and all educational aspects that are going on to date. So Mr. Testani will take it away. And Ms. Allen, you weren't at yesterday's meeting, but the way we did
I couldn't get in yesterday.
Right. The way we did yesterday's meeting is we're going to let Mr. Testani present, and then I'll call for comments and questions from first committee members and then other board members who wish to comment or have a discussion. This way we don't have to talk over each other, just like John did the first meeting. Quite well, and it went well. Okay, Mr. Testani, could you take it away, please?
Sure. So as previously mentioned, I believe Tuesday we talked a little bit about the distance learning plan. We rolled it out and planned immediately after school closure for phase one. That was pretty much a district central office directed to prepare for further implementation in phase 2 and 3. Phase 2 had more teacher, administrator participation in creating the learning experiences, with the idea that phase 3 would begin after April break, which is exclusively teachers working with their classrooms and their students as if they were back in session in the buildings, with obviously the added responsibility of providing printed materials for students that do not have access electronically. So I think we've done a really good job in developing our plan, given the fact that this is something that no one in the country could have predicted or prepared for.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Or you want me to wait until the end of the
Yeah,
presentation?
Ms. Allen, could you please wait for the end so we could just
Sure,
take another
sure.
question, please? Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am.
So having the opportunity over the last month to interface with colleagues across the state on a weekly meeting with our Fairfield County group, and listening and really paying attention to what's going on, particularly down county as we get into the more wealthier districts. I think that Bridgeport should be commended for all the efforts of the staff here in providing a solid distance learning plan, despite the challenges that many of these districts do not have, that we do have. I think we've done an exceptional job, and I'm not just saying that because I'm the leader of this organization, but I really believe that our teachers specifically and our support staff have done an exceptional job. Our administrators at the building level have coordinated with clerical staff in creating printed materials and getting out devices. As you mentioned, one of the topics here is device deployment. We've given out and over 4,000 devices in the last couple of weeks to students and families that are in need. We're preparing for this week, even though it's break. Administrators and clerical staff and teachers have been preparing for the students that would require printed materials. Next week, we're secured a donation from the Lego company that we're accepting tomorrow. Delivery for all our first grade students to receive boxes with instructions that they can create and interface with learning through Lego. We're proud of that opportunity that's been given to us as well. We're hopeful that we can provide a rich program until the end of the school year if necessary. I don't have any doubts in our staff. I see mentioned here our special ed population. I know that our special ed teachers, paraprofessionals, support staff, speech and language pathologists, psychologists, everyone is engaged in doing the best that we can to meet the needs of those students, regardless of what their disability is. I know under the direction of Anna Sousa Martins, the ESL bilingual department has worked extremely hard to reach those families and those students as well. From my discussions with building administrators and with some teachers, I think that as the closure has extended, more and more students have now been engaged in the process and in the distant learning platform. I think initially, and I said this today in another virtual forum, that I think initially many students did not understand that this would be such a long school closure and saw it as an opportunity to take an early vacation. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't think any school-age child, let alone adult, could have imagined that this pandemic would have evolved the way it has. So, but I do think that as teachers reached out and support staff and administration to students to engage them in the process, we've engaged more and more students, and we continue to do that every day. This was April break. I know it wasn't much of an April break for many of our staff members as we prepare for Monday and re-engaging kids. I know one of the topics that we have here is grading. So we have allowed, even though the third marking period closed right before this break, we are allowing students to continue to hand in work right up until Monday, and then grades will be calculated for the third marking period based on where the student was in their grading for the third marking period at the closure, and given the fact that what they've done since the closure will be factored in a modified way. Going forward, there's a lot of discussion going on at the State Department of Education as well as individual school districts on how we will treat the fourth marking period. There's a lot of ideas and things being proposed in other school districts that we've discussed in our district. I am holding some teams, student forums next week with all our high schools and representation from grades 9 through 12. to get an idea of where they think and what they feel would be appropriate and how they would like to see grading possibly for the fourth marking period. I'm particularly interested to hear from the high school students since this will have an impact on their transcripts and possibly applying for post-secondary opportunities in the future. When it comes to promotion, I think at this point, it's really a matter of looking at the whole school district and each student and how we'll proceed. I'm not going to be the one to say that every student should pass, every student should be retained. But I do think that we need to take an approach that there is going to be some gaps in all students, regardless if they're a high achiever or a student that requires some more support. So I think we need to prepare for when school does reopen to provide all students with opportunities to enhance, enrich, and intervene and support so that we can fill those gaps.
Is that all you got for now, Mr. Testani?
Yeah, I think that's just a good opening here. I think
Yeah.
to get the discussion going.
Yeah, I just want to take some questions. Ms.
Sure.
Allen?
This is across the district, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just want to know.
Mr. Lombard, do you have any questions?
Yes. So what is being done with things like AP classes and any types of cooperations we have with like Housatonic or where they're doing dual, in a sense, a dual enrollment type of thing? Has there been communication about that?
Yeah, I mean, everything's the day we started distance learning, our high school students and teachers were engaged through virtual classrooms on Teams. So they didn't have the luxury of easing into this. They were thrown right into the fire. A lot of the high level classes that you're talking about in terms of AP, ECE, they've been going at it as they normally would in a virtual setting. I'm getting positive feedback from teachers and from students that it's working pretty well. We enhanced for other students and parents in phase 2, other additional resources that students and parents can access to keep kids doing more if that's what they wish to do and they can and they're capable of doing more. We're launching as well some resources for parents and students tomorrow regarding social emotional support and things that they can do to and resources that they can access that the state has helped coordinate in the social emotional realm. So, we've tried to hit all the marks, whether it's a student of special needs, a student English language learner, a student that requires additional support academically, social emotionally, and also the students that are high flyers that want to do more and require enrichment and additional things to enhance their skills. So we're running the gamut right now.
And then with the phase 3, is grading is going to be traditional letter grading?
Well, there's some options out there that a lot of my colleagues and I discussed on a call yesterday. There's options of traditional grading at the high school level in particular, giving an option for students to take an incomplete and extending that incomplete where students can then hand in work into the fall at some point, whether it's the first marking period. We've also talked a little bit with the administration at the high school level of extending that maybe through until the Christmas break. There's some ideas that students would have an option of taking the letter grade they earn in the fourth marking period or pass fail, that they would have the option of either or. One of the ideas that we floated around is that on the transcript, if they decided to take a pass fail, that the grade that would be reflected on the transcript would be an average of the first 3 marking periods. So there's a hybrid out there. We're going to throw out all the options to the students and see what the feedback is from them, and give them an opportunity to choose. I think, it's something that it's their transcript, it's their resume that they're going to need to provide to future post-secondary opportunities or employers. So they should have a say in what that's going to look like for them during the fourth marking period.
And then I have a question that's not directly in the classroom, but around it with specials or clubs or extracurricular. Is there any effort given to some type of maintaining communication for those members of those groups with each other, or something to give them something beyond just the classroom experience virtually?
Yeah. So a lot of our, not only just our academic classes, our specialists are also providing learning opportunities as well, but we're also encouraging leaders of clubs. We've got some of our other organizations that are reaching out through the online learning platform as well. We're also seeing coaches of athletic teams participating in finding ways to connect with their players and keep them engaged as well. So we really want to take a holistic approach, not just an academic approach. We know that there's a social emotional component to this that is very critical. Being in isolation for such a long period of time, when you're used to interacting with so many different folks and you rely on so many different folks for different things. Our social work department has done an amazing job under D. Young's leadership in meeting the needs of kids and reaching out to kids and running groups virtually. And we've had a high participation rate there. But I do think, and I said this today, and like I said in another forum, that I'm hoping that we can get some FaceTime, if it's not at the end of the year, but during the summer months, where a lot of times coaches do some conditioning, clubs can get together. We can open up our buildings for some limited use and have face-to-face contact with the folks that really have an impact on these kids' lives.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Joe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got a few things, of course. Yeah, I just want to touch on something Mr. Lombard asked with the AP classes. I understand that the tests are being modified and the students are going to be allowed to take them at home, and it's going to be free response of some sort. And
that's what AP has released, and that's the guidelines that, we follow the guidelines of AP, whether it's in the traditional setting or now in the modified setting.
Right. So they're still going to be able to get their credits for all the work they've done, just in a modified format, but it's still going to be the same credits. Another thing I want to touch on is you're discussing grades and grading formats. There was one grading format bandied about that sounded kind of good too, like a hybrid pass-fail and a pass with distinction. Now, there's also been some discussions with the colleges throughout Connecticut. They were working on the rest of the country, that they'll accept pass-fail on the transcript with no damage to the student's entry requirements and what have you. And also, what was I going to say?
This is for the seniors, right?
Yeah, as far as the
okay, thank you.
Pass-fail, and also with the sports scholarships and something that they used to take a grade as a pass as a D or something like that, and they're no longer going to do that. They're going to accept a pass as a regular grade, and it's not going to affect any sports scholarships. I don't know if you know anything about that or whatever. This is some of the things I've heard.
Yeah, I think the higher ed folks are being very, very accommodating to kids, knowing that the impact that this is going to have and it's had on them already. I've talked to some higher ed folks in the area and with some of our partners, and they have some serious concerns, especially with students that are out of state, if those students are going to return. So they're really heavily relying possibly that kids are going to stay closer to home, at least initially, in attending colleges and universities, and they're prepared to really try to do a heavy recruitment of local students. So I think this could benefit some of our kids as well, because some of the in-state colleges and the local colleges may give them preference now because they have lesser enrollment coming from out of state. I'm not sure if how accurate that is, but it does make a lot of sense when they say it. I'm not sure how many people are going to be quick to send their kids off to live in dormitories and things of that nature initially,
Right.
when there's a possibility of this pandemic flaring up again. So I think that working with our local colleges and universities here will be helpful to our kids as well. And I think they're going to be very open to acceptance and working with our students and families to get them situated. So I'm not that concerned about that. I think they're in a much we're in a much advantageous position as 12th grade students looking to go to college, I think.
Right. Now you mentioned a flare up. That brings me to one of my next points. You mentioned phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I got to actually give compliment on the phase 2. It's much more thorough than the phase 1. The phase 2, I had no issues with it. The work was actually on target and allowed my son to advance as he did it, and it's on point. So that was very well put together. And phase 3, I'm looking forward to. But I want some thought to be given to a possible phase 4. You mentioned a flare-up. If this flare-up happens, and God forbid, plan for the worst, hope for the best, school doesn't open in September. We got to start thinking about what does kindergarten enrollment look like? What does the beginning of the school year look like? God forbid it continues. We should have a plan in place, or at least the thoughts of a plan, so we're not scrambling at the last minute. Like we thought we were going to start in school in late August, and then there's a big flare-up, and the schools are closed till, say, November or October or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a lot of thoughts being put into place. One, if we're able to get into the buildings through the summer. 2, if we're able to start on time. And 3, if there's a possibility, like many colleges and universities, and not be able to start till after the first of the year. So I think given that scenario where we would not be able to attend school immediately on the scheduled start date, I think we'll be in a much better position with devices to be able to do remote learning almost one-to-one throughout the district.
Awesome. Okay, now that you bring up remote learning, that backs me back up to the implementation of phase 3 and device availability. You say we've given out approximately 4,000 devices?
In the last 2 weeks, correct.
4,000 devices. And how many devices are remaining in our schools available for possible distribution?
There's not many. We do have some. And as parents request, we are encouraging schools to give those out. We're really hoping that we receive this order from the Partnership for Connecticut sooner than later. That'll be a big help. I know some principals are leery, but we did tell them to give devices out with the promise that we would replace those devices if anything was to happen to them. We rely on these devices.
Excuse me. Are parents signing contractual obligation to this
Yes.
end or to this effort?
Yes.
Okay.
So normally, as Fairchild Wheeler, there's a waiver that parents would take responsibility to pay for the replacement of the device or the repair, or they could choose to pay for insurance. We don't have that luxury right now. We had to just go on a signature and take and give those out. In some cases, for the older devices, we just tracked who we gave them to and gave them out, knowing that they were older devices and may have a limited shelf life anyway. But we do rely on these devices for instruction during the school year and also for testing purposes. So I know. Excuse
me. Are these devices insured, or they're just handed out? Are they insured?
On the newer devices that we handed out, particularly at Harding, we did take out an insurance policy a couple of weeks ago on those to make sure that we were covered. But then the other reality is there are schools in the district that are technology poor, as we would say, and they have not been the beneficiary of any grants over the last several years. So they've really had nothing to give out. So those are the students that once we secure new technology, those will be the schools that we address immediately. Those are schools like Reed School, Edison School, places like that that really haven't been the beneficiary of anything since 2012.
Okay, and speaking of new devices, again, you had mentioned, I think it was a week back or 2 weeks back, that Joe Ganem and the mayor and the city was going to partner with us to buy new devices. Has there been any motion on that other than the press release?
Yes, actually, it was quiet for a little while. I inquired again on Monday, and I was told to go ahead and make the order. We have confirmation that those will be purchased as a gift from the city of Bridgeport to the Bridgeport Board of Education. Again, it's going to be a little while before we receive those devices. They're just not available anywhere to get, but as soon as we do get those devices, those will be another addition to our fleet. So,
and how many devices are we talking, sir?
About slightly under 2,100 Lenovo 100E laptop computers.
And that's in addition to the approximate 5,000 from.
Correct.
So that's going to be 7,100 new computers coming in, and we got 4,000 out. So even if, God forbid, we lose every single one, we still got a net gain of 3,100 devices. So,
well, and we're looking as a district ourselves to also make a purchase as well. And so Mr. Postolowski and I have had numerous conversations. We're gathering inventory because we also want to make sure that our young learners are also included here, our K1 and 2 students. So we're looking to purchase tablets that would be age appropriate for those students as well. So that, God forbid, again, as you mentioned, we're not able to start school in the fall, that we'll be able to have devices that are age appropriate for those students to be included in remote learning.
Okay, now mentioning remote learning, let's back up a bit to students, disengaged students who have not actually been engaging at all in education. I mean, I look back, do we have any rough number of how many students have not been participating since the closure of school?
No, we were going to try to gauge with teachers the experience at what they're having in terms of not engaging. I can tell you that the pickup and drop off of the packets in phase 1 and 2 has been amazing at the building level of the so I think the ones that are disengaged will be able to get a good number from teachers. I don't want to venture and guess right now, but a lot of those kids are the same kids that were disengaged prior to the closure as well. So some of those folks may, students may have, at this point in the year at the high school level in particular, if a child has done poorly in the first 3 marking periods, they kind of check out because they don't see a reason to stay engaged in the 4th marking period if they can't get the credit for the end of the year. And I'm going to venture to say that at this point, those are the same students that would not be engaged now with the school closure. But
yes, and during the normal course of the year, those students, what attempts are usually made to try to get them back engaged? Like phone call home or
phone calls home, letters home, try to engage parents through any type of contacts we have for parents. Some of our elementary kids that we have not heard from, we've been slowly finding that there are a number of that when we first closed, they went down to states in the South where there was very little flare up at that time to try to protect them from the virus. So I'm going to imagine that that's going to be the case for some of our people. I'm not sure what the percentage of that's going to be, But, we continue to have support staff on hand to try to reach out to families to make sure that students are engaged in the process, either remotely or with printed materials.
Right. And are we gonna have some sort of tracking mechanism to track the students, and especially with phase 3, probably be a little easier than with the most of the packets if we more students engaged in online learning. But, because one of the signs in the schools of a kid in crisis or a child in crisis is attendance, and we've had the attendance matters thing going on for quite a few years. And the reason attendance is so important is because engagement helps the students learn and what have you. And it's also a sign sometimes of neglect or whatever have you. And contacts are made, and sometimes reports got to be made. So I want to ensure we don't drop the ball on that, and to whatever extent possible, like still maintain contact with the parents who are with the children who are chronically absent, try to get them back engaged. I don't know who could have responsibility for making those contacts, if it's the individual teachers or maybe guidance or social workers. And that brings me
Well,
to
it's everybody.
right. That brings me to the non-instructional services like psychologists and special ed. Well, special ed is an instructional service, but like the additional services, special ed means psychology and all that. How are students supposed to be able to engage these services?
Well, like I said, the support staff are reaching out to students that they work with through the Teams platform. Special ed teachers are working with their caseload remotely, as well as through contacts with parents. We have speech and language services. They're doing an amazing job through virtual online sessions. So I think we've done a really good job, given the circumstances, to cover all our bases. It's not an ideal situation by any means. These are services that are definitely more effective in a face-to-face manner, but given the circumstances, I think we've done a really good job in making sure that there's contact from all our service providers.
Yeah, going forward, just keep in mind, I'm going to
Now, when is school scheduled to start?
Miss Allen, one moment, please. I'm always going to look for.
I didn't get the starting date.
We didn't get the Miss Allen. Hold on.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I'm always going to, Miss Tessai, I'm always going to bring up kid that's missing. I'm always going to look for that last kid that we didn't catch. So just don't feel like I'm always negative. It's just like I'm looking at the kids who aren't engaged, like the ones that are picking up the packet. You can't engage those children remotely. So I'm going to try to think of ways, and we should be trying to think of ways, if we aren't already, to engage those students that are picking the packets who may be special ed, who may need special services, whose parents may not even be focused on the electronic ways to get this information to them. You understand?
Got you. So we've got that covered in phase 2. Phase 1, a lot of the principals for special education students in their buildings did mailings of the packets to the homes. Because when I found that out, in phase 2, we had some of our van drivers and some of our nutrition drivers actually deliver packets to homes.
Oh, awesome. So I can pretty much done with device ability. All right. Possibly, if we go back to school, what are we going to do with I know you talked a little bit about graduation last night's meeting, but can you reiterate the possible plans for graduation?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of options that we've been thinking about, depending on where we're at as a public health crisis. It could be just students and staff, limited staff that participate in the actual graduation, and we live stream it for folks to watch online, as we do normally live stream anyway. There could be a possibility, depending if we do return, and that was the plan this year. We had funds raised through outside donors to go to the arena, that we could possibly do a limited fan, if you want to say, or family gathering, because the arena is large enough that if we limited the number of folks that could enter in, that we could do social distancing, if that's a possibility. So
Right.
I'm
What's-
I'm willing to explore all options. I just don't want to wait too long, if we can, because I don't want kids to head off to college and not have the opportunity to participate in their moment, because they've worked extremely hard to get to that point. They're already losing a lot of the privileges and things that our 12th graders get to engage in during their senior year at the end of the year, particularly. So this is the moment that I don't want them to feel like they didn't have.
Yeah, also, I agree 100% if possible, and they can remain safe. And would the arena be? I know it's just theoretical right now. Would it be possible to to space the graduates out on the floor with the 6 feet apart? And
Absolutely, absolutely.
all right. Okay, Miss Allen, you had something to say?
That's okay. He answered it,
I think you want to ask
what I was going to ask.
graduate. The new start date of the school. I think you were asking, because the website got the 18th, and the mayor's thing is the 20th. The governor says the 20th.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right now, there's a lot of things that are uncertain. I'm hoping at the very least that we can get a couple of weeks with our children again to at least do a check-in, a wellness check, as you mentioned. Mr. Skolvik, when you say that about being perceived pessimistic, I don't see it that way. I think that we have a responsibility to every child, not just certain groups of children. So trust me, I'd like to do a check-in with our kids, see how they're doing, not only academically, but emotionally as well, before the summertime. So, let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that there's an opportunity here sometime, at least in June.
Are we having summer school?
Right now, we are planning to have some sort of summer school if we can, even at the high school level for sure, because we know there's kids that want to recover credit, if not from this year, from previous years. So even if we have to do it remotely, we're putting out a new posting for summer school teachers for high school credit recovery that would include a certain level of proficiency on our team's platform for them to participate. Because if we're going to do this, we're going to do it with our teachers, not only that are solid instructionally, but also with the technology to make sure kids get a robust summer program.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, I have another question.
Go ahead, Mr. Lombard.
Yeah, what is the approach for teaching side for PD, for professional development and support, not just obviously for doing remote learning and distance learning and this other new challenges, but also for the originally planned supporting and training and professional development?
Great question, Mr. Lombard. So because we figured that there's not only a need for professional development through this process, where I think you heard on Tuesday, we set up an academic team of folks to provide support and guidance with the platform. So I can't take full credit, but I got some input from some colleagues. And beginning next week, our Fridays are going to be days, we call them flex days, where teachers would be available from 9 to 2 o'clock for any type of professional development, whether it was district-wide or whether it was school-based. So students are expected to continue to work, but those Fridays are dedicated as flex days so that we can provide professional development to staff, and also give them some time to plan and make adjustments as they see fit to their online learning planning and lessons. So great question. We kind of thought of that a couple of weeks ago and wanted to implement that, especially if this is going to be a long-term end of the year type thing. So we wanted to make sure we covered all our bases when it came to that kind of stuff.
Okay. Will will your teacher retirements this year affect this planning? Will your teacher retirements, or they will retire after, or
Ye-
they're going to stay on?
They're
Those
staying
teachers
out.
who planned.
Yeah, I mean, they still can retire and will retire at the end of the year. Unfortunately, some of the celebrations that go along with that are obviously not going to be had, but we're going to continue to plan. We've received notifications from certain teachers that are planning to retire at the end of the school year, and we're going to plan to fill those vacancies for next school year. If the scenario does present itself, we're going to have to be very creative in our training of new teachers and staff if we're not able to open in August or September.
Okay.
I apologize. Mr. Benahan, you still here?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm
here.
sorry.
Waiting for you.
Yeah,
I have
Mr.
a question.
Benahan, do you have any questions? You've been sitting
Yes,
there
sir. I
patient.
was waiting for you. Thank you for giving me the chance. I have a question for Mr. Testani.
Yes, sir.
My first question is going to be how parents supposed to upload the package so the student is in the low grade. The second one is the team for the elementary kids is not working, and the parents supposed to learn and how the kids, if the teacher don't really know how to use the team themselves. And the third one will be a fee for the summer school. If they did
So,
the summer school.
Yeah, so good question. So for our primary grades, we do understand that many of the parents have expressed that they prefer the written and printed materials for the kids in the elementary grades. That's where we're seeing most of them being picked up. I've had a few parents call the office and say, if you can send more printed stuff, if you can send more books, it's much easier for me to sit down and help my child. So we are grateful that the Scholastic book and learning packets will be coming from the Partnership for Connecticut next week as well. So this will be another resource for those parents. We're hoping that at least for those folks that the team's outlet is a good way just to connect with parents, to have conversations with parents, to help provide emotional support and some academic support so the parents can help their children. We know this is very stressful on families. Whether you're in Greenwich or Bridgeport, New Haven or Hartford, I think this is just a very stressful time for parents to be able to have to be mom, dad, an employee and a teacher all at the same time. So, if we can at least begin to get folks comfortable on the platform, I think when we return to school, this is going to be a requirement for all teachers to utilize with their students and families on a regular basis, even for just minor communications, because I think we need to be prepared in the future if we ever have any kind of long-term closure ever again. And your last question, if we do a high school summer school virtually, even if we do it in person, I don't think this is the time to ask families to come up with any money, especially given the fact that a lot of people have lost income as a result of the pandemic and they're not able to work and earn. So no, we would not charge this year if that's the case.
And the last question, are they going to determine what senior graduate or not?
Well, I think, for the students that are close, if there's anything related to grading that is close, we really need to look at those students individually to make a determination if summer school is required, which there's always cases where seniors do not graduate in June. They have to go to summer school in order to make up a class in order to get their diploma. But we're hoping to give students the benefit of the doubt, given the fact that if they stayed engaged with their teachers throughout this process and the grades are close, that we should give them the benefit of the doubt and graduate them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sistani. That's it, Mr. Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else with any questions?
What I'm trying to remember what some parent told me about certain children in certain schools, fourth graders, I believe it was, that they were getting some special treatment or educational opportunity that others won't get. I heard something. I don't know where I heard it. I just kind of picked up something and dragged it before you to
Yeah,
see.
the first graders are all going to be receiving the Lego boxes, and then all K through 8 students are going to be receiving the Scholastic book packs that come with learning experiences related to the books that have been selected for those grade levels. So fourth grade is included in that. There was some opportunities had we not closed for fourth graders to access the Discovery Museum for a program that they were offering for our fourth grade students, but unfortunately they are closed now. And we're trying to get, they're trying to provide us with something online that we can utilize with fourth grade that was compatible with what they were going to do if we got our kids up to the Discovery Museum.
Okay. So do we have money to fund all of this stuff, or we're getting grants for much of the stuff?
Well, we're trying right now to utilize what we have. The only stuff that we're getting in terms of donations have come from the Partnership for Connecticut. That'll be the Scholastic. That'll be the laptops for the high school students. We're getting the purchase of laptops from the city of Bridgeport as a donation to the Board of Ed. And then we were able to work closely with Lego to get our first graders the Lego boxes. So pretty much we had another potential donor, but they backed out yesterday. I guess they weren't able to secure the extent of funding that they thought they were to go statewide, so they're not doing anything. So that's where we're at in terms of donations.
Is that all, Ms. Allen?
That is my tidbit for now.
Okay. Mr. Lombard, anything else?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
And Mr. Benahan, any other questions before we go?
Yes, I have one more question. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Question, Mr. Testani. I have the concern from some parents that I know, I believe 63 is like, I have to be like a, it's like a F. But if they see the student need like a 2-point, let's say to get at least the D, do you think it's possible just because the situation was going on, the teacher will help the student to pass, let's say they need only two more points to pass, the grade?
Yes. So what we talked about was that if students put in the effort to complete a certain percentage of the work given during this time, that we would give them the benefit of the doubt because of the efforts that they took in order to participate during this pandemic. So yes, sir.
Okay, sound good. And the last question is, the city said they're gonna donate on laptop, and I believe when that's what the mayor said, 2,000. That's not including the other one laptop, like you said, is coming from us, or that's another additional 2,000 laptops.
Those are additional that the mayor made a commitment, as everyone heard, to the public. And like I said, it was quiet for a couple of weeks, but on Monday, after some inquiry and everything, we did get back on track and get confirmation that purchase would be made, as the Norwalk mayor did for the Board of Ed in Norwalk of $400,000. We were able to push the mayor for $500,000.
So in other words, we're gonna have to go like 5,000 for the city and plus 2,000 laptop. That's around 7,000.
Yes.
All right. Just want to be sure. All right, thank you. That's it, Mr. Joe. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Testani, do you have anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
No, I just think that, like I said the other night, I appreciate all the support. I think that every day we're trying to do a little bit more. It's been a challenge, but it's good to know that, we're not alone in this fight, that there's a whole community that's come together to try to support our kids and our families. And I think that's, I wouldn't have expected anything less from the Bridgeport community.
Amen. I would like you to thank everybody, thank your staff, thank you, Ms. Vajay, Mr. John, for coming and putting this together and helping us out, all the support staff. And on that note, I'd like to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Second.
All right, that's fine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Everybody have a great night. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank
Bye.
you. You too
Bye.
as
Take
well,
care.
everybody.
Take care, sir.
Bye.
God bless you all.
Bye-bye now.